everyone. I'm Linda Nickell, and welcome to a bonus session of the Happiness Hour. My goal here is to help us all connect, inspire, and create. And every week, I invite a speaker to share their passion, their creativity, and their expertise in photography with us. A list of upcoming presentations is listed under Happiness Hour on my website at lindanickell.com. My guest is Matt Smith. A Texas-based landscape and astrophotographer who is known for his dark sky images. Matt's vast photography collection includes the most perfectly captured nighttime landscapes that are often capped with the Milky Way. His composite work is dreamy and flawless. Matt's work has evolved into a specialized collection of detailed, rich, deep space images that are often photographed from his own backyard. In this bonus session, Basics of Lunar Photography, Matt will talk about the equipment he uses, the pros and cons of using a DSLR camera versus a planetary camera, and he'll show us how to plan for that perfect moonshot. Welcome to the Happiness Hour, Matt. And so before you get started with your presentation, would you just introduce yourself and take a minute to tell us how you got into astrophotography, and specifically, how did you learn about all this deep space stuff? And if I missed something in your intro, please feel free to add that.
Oh, no, that was super awesome. Thank you. Let's see. Well,
I'm a huge fan. I'm not going to lie.
We've had tacos together. I'm just another guy.
We have had tacos together. And you know, either you can tell the story or I can tell the story about that sunset that we shot.
Yeah, that was...
Okay, so I'll just tell the story because you're not going to be able to deny it. But so we go out and we're shooting sunset, and Matt's like, "There's nothing here. It's not going to fizzle." I'm like, "Just give it a minute, because this is my opportunity to shoot with Matt Smith in the middle of South Texas brush country."
Burrito Springs.
And you know, it was kind of one of those, I don't know if it's going to happen or not. And then it did, and it exploded. It was a cool shot. So it was a cool opportunity for us to shoot. And so I get to say, "I told you so." And that'll be the only time I get to say, "I told you so." So
you did tell me so.
All right.
And you know, I actually used that going out from that point on. I'm like, it happened at that time. It's going to happen again. I just got to wait.
You just got to wait. You know, I had to learn that in my photography, because I almost always shoot with people that are better than me, because I'm learning something. And I learn something every time I go out with somebody. And that's one of those things I learned early on, was just wait. And that was one of those moments that it really did. It gave us something exciting to look at. So.
Oh, that orange was real awesome.
It was really great. Okay.
The sun was just barely over the horizon, but it was still there.
And we had a windmill. It was awesome. Yeah. Okay. So how did you get into astrophotography?
Well, my love of the night sky kind of goes back to being a kid. And then getting into astrophotography, you know, after getting the oil field and having the little bit of, expendable income, it was like, well, I get a telescope. And then you get a telescope and you're like, oh, there's the moon, it's all these craters, and oh, there's Jupiter, and oh, there's Saturn. The first time I ever saw Saturn was on my birthday in 2011. And then, of course, you know, you have the iPhone 3G or whatever it was back then, and you're holding it up to the eyepiece, and it's just all little shaky white blur. And I was like, well, better than that. How do I do better than that? Oh, you need a planetary camera. Well, what is that? So then that goes into research, and there wasn't that much on YouTube back then for that specific thing. So there's dedicated forums to that, and then it's just researching. It's like, well, I can afford this camera, and so you do that, and you take this picture of Saturn, and it's just this ringed planet on a black background. And I have never been more hooked on anything in my life after working on that very first Saturn picture. And then from then it's just, well, I need a better camera. I need a bigger telescope. I need it's just a rabbit hole of stuff after that. But it's just that one thing, like you were saying, where you're starting to get hooked on astrophotography. It's just going to be, it'll happen where you're like, I got to wake up at 2:00 in the morning and go chase the Milky Way now.
It's addictive. It really is. And some people like me that have a little bit of an obsessive compulsive, like I got to have this. You jump into it, and it's not hard to catch yourself spending money and learning and just getting up a lot earlier than you ever wanted to.
It's worth it though.
Yeah, it is. It is. All right. So, what did I miss in your bio? Anything that you want to share?
Nah, I mean, I think you pretty much covered more stuff than I thought you would.
All right. So do you want to get into your presentation then?
Okay, let's see. So most people obviously who are watching this are already photographers, and most of them are probably going to have a telephoto lens. So that's my first to get started. Any kind of telephoto lens. This is a 70 to 200, and 200 millimeters will get you some great shots, but it will not get the close-up detailed shots. But it is super great for a landscape, far away, to compress the moon to a landscape subject. And if your camera has stabilization or your lens has stabilization and you can handhold it, you start getting into the 400 or even the 600, the 150 to 600 that you got. 600 millimeters will start pulling out those details and stuff a little bit better. And it's just putting that back in the bag. And it's just an entry point, because everybody uses their phone and it's like, oh, it doesn't look like that. It's just a blowed out fuzzy ball. But the telephoto lens is probably where most people would start.
Okay.
After that, if you have a DSLR, and you want the closer pictures of the moon without having to spend too much extra money, a telescope, one like this, looks super big and expensive, but it's not. It's an achrochromatic refractor, so it only has 2 lenses. I think this tube is like maybe $200.
Oh, okay. That's not a bank breaker.
No, not at all. But it does come with cons. Since it's an achromatic, you will have chromatic aberration, but it's not anything that you can't fix in post. And if you go black and white, then it doesn't matter anyway.
Right.
But if you were to go with a telescope, a starter telescope like that, then for your DSLR, all you have to do is get the T-ring and T adapter, which went the wrong way. Which just is your lens mount, and then that replaces the eyepiece of a telescope, and it clicks onto the camera, and now your camera is the eyepiece.
Okay.
If you don't have a DSLR, but you know somebody who has a telescope, or even you have a telescope, this is a smartphone adapter. So that clips onto the eyepiece, and then you can move the adapter to perfectly center your phone over the eyepiece, and then just take a picture of the moon.
Okay, I might be doing that. What is that called again?
This is the Celestron NEXYZ, and it clamps onto the eyepiece. You can tighten it down, and then it has knobs right here to move it left, right, up, down, and out. And then once your camera phone is over the eyepiece, then take a picture of the moon.
So it's basically, you can just get started with your iPhone or your camera phone, And then you go down to that, I want it a little bit better. And then all of a sudden you're in DSLR mode. Okay.
Okay. So after all that, let's just say, okay, so the DSLR will get you a full lunar disk, detailed craters, and all that stuff. But it still can't deliver the resolution, quote unquote, resolution of a planetary camera. And that's because a planetary camera takes video. And so when I say planetary camera, this is the camera. That's the sensor right there.
It's teeny tiny.
Yeah, you can see the other camera right here on the back of the telescope. And so by taking video frames, if you ever look up at the stars and you see the stars twinkling, or like when the moon is on the horizon, how it looks kind of wavy, that's our atmosphere. And taking pictures, still pictures with the DSLR will get you crisp shots, but it can't beat the atmosphere. Taking video frames, like let's say taking 1,000 video frames and then stacking the best 300 of those frames will get you a much sharper, crisp resolution for a given spot on the lunar surface. Now, the bigger telescope you have, that field of view is going to be a lot smaller, and you have to take panels of frames and make a panorama, and it gets a little bit confusing after that. But like I told you a while ago, it's just that rabbit hole. Like, how do I get the best, sharpest moon picture I can get? And that's just an evolution of how to do it.
It's a great little map to starting with your equipment. So it's helpful. Let's start with the moon.
Okay.
How do you? Okay, so most people will use photo pills. That's kind of the basic app that a lot of photographers are using. What do you use to get yourself prepared for shooting it?
Okay. So, and I don't know if you can put that like on the finished product or not, but there is an app for free called Moon Globe HD. And so
What I'll ask you to do is give that to me over a text or something, and I'll share a link with everybody. How about that?
yeah.
Okay.
So like let's say so this is a couple nights after the full moon. So man, there's just so much to talk about.
I knew this was not going to be an easy topic for you to tackle because there's so much that and there's so much that you're excited about shooting. So I'll take it in pieces, and then if we can't get it all into this one little bitty
That's fine.
session, we'll come back and I'll nail you down with another date, and we'll come back and do Matt Smith part 2.
Yeah, so like you were saying, photo pills, if you're going to do the landscape picture with the moon, that's probably the app that I would use also, especially with the AR view, where you can plan, like, I want the moon behind the water tower, I want the moon behind the windmill, I want, what time is that going to be, and so on and so forth. When you do a close-up of the moon through a telescope or a high-powered telephoto lens, you really don't want to shoot full moon if you're going crater detail, because it's flat, just like a front flash on a camera.
Okay.
But if you are going to shoot for detailed craters, there's an app called Moon Globe HD, and it shows you what the moon looks like from where you're at. And so, and the different craters, it has all the crater names and everything. So if you have a telescope and you want to shoot a particular crater, it'll show you what day, what time, what it'll look like, because the thing about the moon is it changes every day or night. It changes every night. And so, if the sunlight's going this way, then 2 weeks from now, the sunlight's going to be going that way. And that crater is going to look completely different than it looks, tonight.
Right.
And so Moon Globe HD is the one that I use to plan for close-up crater shots. and the photo pills would be the one for the landscape shots.
Okay. Okay. I did not know that. See, I'm learning.
The awesome thing about most planetary software, and that even goes for planets pictures, most of it's free. So you've got to pay for the equipment, and the software's covered.
Well, they're just kind of like luring you in to get your basics, and then you can get going. So,
Yeah.
do you want to show us some of your images?
Sure. Actually, the last one I did was actually the best. I mean, I'll try to replicate it maybe tonight, but I don't know. It'll be pretty tough. So this image is the stitched, just like in a landscape photo. If you use a planetary camera, you will have a smaller field of view. So it's basically just doing a panorama. But for the moon or planets or deep space, they call them mosaics because they want to feel special. It's just a panorama. And you can see where the stitching, kind of stopped and all that. But the finished product of this, I mean, and you can see, if you look down here, you see the file size. That's 900 megabytes. Yeah. 12,000 pixels by 12,000 pixels.
So what kind of, okay, so I'm just going to ask this. What kind of storage system are you using? Because I know that you're shooting a lot. So you've got to have, I don't know how many photos. Let me ask you this. How many photos are you taking to create this one image?
Okay, so for this picture, it was with a 183 mm, ASI 183 mm, and that's a 20.5 megapixel camera that's taking video frames.
Okay.
So 1,000 frames was 19 gigabytes, and there was 26 panels. So that's like 494 gigabytes for the raw data of this picture, half a terabyte.
And so how does your computer not explode?
I don't know. It hasn't done it so far. But see, that's another segue into when you're shooting. And so DSLR has the storage in the camera.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't. You're having to use your camera while doing that. But the way I do it is I'll take the video and it writes to the hard drive of the computer. And then while I'm shooting, I'll transfer those files to an external hard drive while I'm shooting. And then so there's, I don't know, I have a 12, an 8, and like 4 2 terabyte hard drives, and everything just all kind of gets transferred. Yeah. It's a lot.
It is. That is a lot. I can't do the math.
I mean, so that's half a terabyte for 2 hours of shooting.
Okay.
You really sustain that over a long period of time. That's why this is like a real special project.
Right.
But I mean, yeah. So all that picture right there is raw data that has, and each panel has gone through a program called AutoStacker, which sorts and stacks and spits out an image file. And you take those image files, you put it in Microsoft Ice, which I use for landscape panoramas, and it spits out a picture. So this is the raw image, and go through the steps in Photoshop after that to your liking, and then that's what it's left with. But the full screen, this is the full resolution file, and so if I just zoom in, I can zoom in to the limiting resolution of the camera, and just keep going and going and going. And so that crater, that's Copernicus, which is 53 miles across.
The large one? Is that what you're pointing at? Yeah. That's ridiculously detailed.
Well, and so while I'm here, I get this all the time on Facebook, Instagram, and my personal life, whatever. Why can't we see the stuff the astronauts left on the moon? And I'll tell you why. So if you do the math, which I did actually while I was processing this picture, if we zoom in and zoom in and zoom in all the way until Photoshop won't let us zoom in anymore, which is there. 1 pixel is a 1/4 mile across. So that's a 1/4 mile by a 1/4 mile squared. If I wanted to shoot the Apollo lander, or the lunar lander, which is 30 foot in diameter, to fit it on like 4 pixels just to see, each leg coming off or whatever, I would need like 170 times more resolution. And it's just not possible from Earth.
Okay. But it's pretty cool.
Yeah, no, I mean, if
it's pretty well. First of all, let me just applaud you on doing the math, because I don't do math. And it's pretty amazing how much you're pushing Photoshop here too.
yeah, well, I mean, but so what if we can't see the stuff left behind? I mean, so 4 of these pixels is roughly a mile. So I mean, you're seeing features on the moon 240,000 miles away that are a mile across with consumer amateur equipment.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. So how long did it take for you to process this image?
Okay, so just the stacking part, which, the computer processor is all wrapped up in that one program. So while it's going on, I can't do anything else. But just to stack the 26 panels to get 26 images took like 24 hours.
Holy cow.
Yeah. And then after that, it was stitching them together and then doing the actual work, which I could only work like 2 layers at a time, because every time I would duplicate the layer, now I'm at however many gigabytes. So I would have to work on a layer and then save as, and then do a little bit more, and then save as with another number behind it, and then repeat all the way until I got done. So it took probably about 2 days.
2 days. Yeah. At any point, did you think, oh my gosh, my computer is going to explode and it's going to say reboot? I would have just died. I would have given up at that point.
So the first time I opened it in Photoshop, I just kept doing actions, kept doing my processing steps, and then eventually it just crashed. And I was like, I got to do all this over again. So that's when I started doing the saving and closing and the reopen.
Yeah. So 2 days later. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, okay. So what do you do with these images? I mean, I know that, I see them because I follow you on Instagram. What are you doing with them? Is this fun and games, or are you getting them published, or
These haven't got.
You're beyond hobbyist.
Yeah. I don't know, advanced hobbyist. I do it for the. I don't know. So for years shooting the Milky Way, I hated the moon, and anybody who shoots Milky Way hates the moon. Just because it's too bright, you can't shoot the Milky Way when the moon's out.
Right.
So once I got back into planetary, and now we're at a point where Jupiter and Saturn and Mars and there's nothing else to shoot. So all there is to shoot is the moon. Right. And so, everybody's used to that gray ball with craters on it. And it's kind of like, well, I saw how to do mineral moon pictures before. And then it's like, well, how can I just make the most insanely detailed pictures I could possibly, because people have been shooting the moon for 40, 50 years, but having the technology we have now with the optical power and certain atmospheric conditions where the air is real stable, you can get super sharp detail. And ideally, I would like to sell them as prints. But an image like this needs to be printed the size of a house to be appreciated.
Sure.
An image like this on an 8x10, you're losing the scale of why it was made. And then figuring out how to incorporate the colors into the images, and like the dark side that's illuminated, how that's done, because all that's done in Photoshop. None of those are ever real, which is another thing we could talk about. I don't know, like, to get back to your, I don't know why I'm doing it. I'm just doing it because I don't know. It changes every night, and it's like, how can I just get more detail, more resolution, more,
I don't know why you're doing it, but I think this is why you're doing it, because you are addicted to it and you're learning stuff every time you go out there. And I've watched your YouTube channel, and you're like a little kid. You're like a little kid that's got new toys, and you freaking love this stuff. And so it's fun to watch. Everybody's got a job. Everybody has a real 9-to-5 job. We're not photographers that's not what we do as a career. But this is your escape, and this is something that you're really, really good at. And you're making a name for yourself. And I'm not talking just in Texas, because that's where you are, that's where I am, and that's how I know who you are. But I see the people that leave comments on your page, and you're getting a lot of people excited about this type of photography. And that's kind of one of the reasons that I, when I was going down my list of people that I wanted to come on and do a little session with me, I was like, I know he's going to say no, but I'm going to ask him anyway. So I'm absolutely tickled that you said yes. So
no, I wish I could have done it sooner, to be honest. Everything just, holidays and with the broken arm, all that stuff just gets ridiculous. But actually, what you were saying, I think, makes the most sense. I'm excited because I love it. The wife and the kids, they all stay inside. They don't want nothing to do with it, whatever. But I don't care. But if I can take a picture like this, or if I can do a stupid YouTube video where, I act the way that I act, because the way that I am in the YouTube videos and the way that I was when you met me, that's just the way I am.
You're goofy as heck. Everybody thinks you're cool, but you're kind of goofy, and I love that.
Yeah. But if one parent watches that video and their kid watches that video and they're like, well, I want a telescope. I want to see Saturn. I want to look at the moon. And it just snowballs from there, especially now with everything being so, I don't know, like 10 years ago, it wasn't that easy where you could just reach out to people and get an instant response. Now it's like, hey, I have this budget and my kid wants a telescope. What should I do? Oh, you should do this. Is there a husband at home? You should get a bigger telescope because he can lift it around, and there you have that interaction, and you just inspired 5 people to get a telescope, or to go into science, or whatever, or to have, less light pollution in their town so more people can see the Milky Way. Just something, inspiring people to do that.
Yeah. Well, I think you're doing that. I think you realize it. And if you don't, I'm going to say you inspired me. The moon, what you said earlier, the moon gets in my way. We can't shoot the Milky Way if the moon is up. And so it's kind of a moon. And, my 1 or 2 shots that I have of the moon are this, like I just said, is a big gray ball that kind of looks like a navel orange, and it's not very interesting to me, but I haven't really tried. And I will admit, I'm not going to try to do what you're doing, but I still think it's really cool. And because of your images, I'm noticing those craters, and I'm thinking, well, that gives it some texture, and it has become a little bit more interesting to me. So thank you for that.
Well, for anybody who's listening strictly for uh, social media attention, or they want to boost their exposure, everybody likes the moon. Just take pictures of the moon and post it, because nobody cares that you traveled all the way to Big Bend, 9.5 hours to get to the Milky Way, but you take a picture of the moon from your backyard and everybody's like, oh my God, I love the moon so much.
I'm laughing because it's true, because my big fuzzy gray navel orange, people got really excited, and I'm thinking, you don't really need to look at other people's pictures, because this is crap. But you're right. And I don't know why people are so fascinated with it. And when I'm looking at this particular image, I'm a little fascinated. There's color. I don't those colors are in there, and I know that's a little bit of manipulation, but it makes it so much more interesting and so much alluring to just, it's fascinating. So there's that.
Well, the thing, so kind of backtracking all the way to the beginning, where I was going through the different, optical trains to use, whether it be cell phone or DSLR or whatever, the steps to get sharper pictures is really actually the same for everything you use. If you have a phone, and you put it up to the eyepiece, take a picture, and obviously it's going to be better than anything you could do with just the phone by itself. But if you were to take 30 seconds to take a video of the moon, and then run that video through your computer into the steps, which I've done the YouTube tutorials for that. But if you were to do that, you'd be amazed at the sharpness you could get from your phone.
Wow.
And then that translates directly over to DSLR, which translates directly over. You're just using a different camera, but the process is the same for everything.
Okay. So one of the things that we said that you were going to cover through this session, it's basic lunar photography. So the thing that we haven't covered yet, we talked about the different kind of cameras that you can get into, the pros and cons of them. But tell me the basics of for someone that's never shot the moon before. Dumb it down. What do they need? How do they do it? So this is basic Moon 101. I'm Linda. I've never shot the moon before, but I have a camera, and someone told me I needed a tripod. So just your basic settings, maybe.
Okay. Well, yeah. So if you have a DSLR and the longest lens that you have, whether that be your, the 55 to 300 or whatever kit lenses are, or if you have a friend, get your hands on the longest focal length instrument you can. If your buddy has somebody who has a telescope, get the telescope, whatever. Mm-hmm. But don't take one picture. That's what a lot of people, I think, they take a picture and they're happy with it. And anything that has to do above the ground in photography, stacking is what you're looking for. So if you have a tripod and you have your long lens and you have your camera, then your settings obviously are going to be different for your device. So we'll just say F8. You put it at F8, check your histogram. Don't rely on the live view or whatever. Take a test shot, the histogram. You'll have that peak, get that peak in the middle. You don't want it too far to the right because your craters will blow the highlights. Just put it in the middle and use a higher ISO, then try to keep the shutter speed as low as possible and boost the ISO if you have to. And that's another reason why you stack, because you don't want movement and you want the fastest shutter speed possible because you're taking a picture through the atmosphere. So you don't want that atmosphere waving on you. So keep the ISO high, shutter speed low, and take 40 pictures as fast as possible. And hopefully, the same, try to keep the moon in the same position as possible. Obviously, the longer the focal length you have, you're gonna have to reposition. But take 40 pictures, take 80 pictures, take whatever, or take 20 pictures and then change your settings, and then take 20 more pictures and change those settings. That way you cover all your bases. And then later that night, the next day, whatever, I have those tutorials, whatever, but you take those frames and you stack them to make a single moon picture. And now you have less noise, a sharper image, and you can process that. And even with beginner equipment, you'll have really sharp, a sharper picture, especially you would taking one picture.
So, are you using Photoshop as your software? Is that what you're using to stack all of this?
No, Photoshop is the last software.
Okay, so walk us through that, because that's all I would think to use.
Okay, so and it's planetary because the moon is a planetary body, but in planetary there is a software called AutoStacker, which you take your moon pictures in this case, and you put them in that program, and you select points. You'll do a surface. It'll image stabilize the pictures to a certain point. It's cold. How are you dealing with this cold in this state? It's ridiculous.
I have the heat running and I'm sitting with a blanket on my lap.
I want to shoot the moon tonight. It's supposed to be 34. I was like, oh, it's so good.
Yeah. Okay, go ahead and finish, and then I'll come back with my thought of you're dying because you're not in Big Bend. But go ahead.
So AutoStacker will take those frames, because they're not images at this point anymore, they're just frames, and they will stack them, and you finesse the software to get the best final image out of that. And then depending on the file size, you can take it from there and go into a program called Registax and adjust what are called wavelets. And wavelets are the size of certain details. So bigger craters or the moon overall might be targeted at layer 6, where the smaller craters will be layer 1. But you can adjust those to your taste, however you want to. There's no rule book for that. There's 100% to your taste. From there, you will go to Photoshop, and you can mess with the saturation. You can do your final crop. Add sharpening, take away sharpening, do blurs, do more noise reduction, and all that stuff. But it's just, you're ultimately taking those frames all the way through the process of making an image, and then making the image sharper, and then fine tuning the image, and now you have your first moon picture.
Ta-da! It seems you make it sound a little simple. I know it's not, but for those that are a little bit more tech savvy and understanding, how to do a lot of, I guess at this point it's kind of like doing a composite, right?
No, I mean, because it's real. All
real?
you captured is real.
Okay.
So it's like the mineral.
I guess I'm thinking composite is like slamming these 400 images together.
Say that again.
I guess I was kind of defining compositing as like slamming multiple images together, and I don't think I accurately did define that, but that's why I was thinking more compositing.
Oh no! Well, I mean, because I was compositing the Milky Way for a while, so that's what I thought you were talking about.
Yeah. No. Completely different thing.
Yeah, no, stacking is in astrophotography, you have your signal to noise ratio. When you're shooting the moon, when you're shooting anything, Milky Way, what have you, anything where the ISO is over 100, you're going to have that added noise. But by stacking those frames, you increase the signal and drastically reduce the noise to where, let's just say somebody did want to print it and they wanted to print a 16 by 20. If they take a single picture, that picture will be grainy and noisy when you print it out that big. By stacking, just like with the Milky Way, that all that graininess goes away and the color noise from the ISO, all that goes away, and you have a much more smoother result. That's all the stacking is for.
Okay. Okay. So one of the things that you've been listing some of the different softwares. So I'm going to have you send me those, and I'll include those in the links below. That so anybody that's interested in trying to find those, it won't be difficult for them to do.
Now, all the softwares are free. Besides Photoshop, all of them are free.
Excellent. So I know that if other people were here tonight, the first question they'd be asking is, what do you shoot with, and what's your go-to lens when it's not your telescope?
Oof. For the moon, I don't bother.
You don't bother at all?
I don't. The last moon picture I did for landscape was actually last December 2019, leaving Big Bend, because again, it was the last Milky Way of the decade, or the last moon of the decade.
Right.
So I was leaving Big Bend and I just pulled over on the side of the road and I took the telephoto lens out and I got a picture of a house way out in the middle of nowhere with the moon coming off the mountains, and oh, it's the moon. No, it's the last moon of the decade. Whatever. It's just another moon picture.
Just another moon to you.
Okay. Yeah. Other than that, I just don't bother.
Yeah. So you're really into the deep space stuff, aren't you?
So what's the longest lens that you have?
Me? Yeah. I think it's the 150 to 600 that I was using when we were out.
That's 2,800 millimeters.
Yeah. I know. It's like, why bother with my little piddly 150 to 600? I get it. I totally.
Well, the 70-200 is my longest lens that I have. So
yeah. So what's the point at that? Yeah. When you've got that kind of toy, why would you bother pulling out your plastic stuff?
Yeah.
Okay, so is there anything else that you want to talk about related to moon, and then we can jump to some other questions that I have?
No, I'll probably go off tangents from you asking your questions. So
that's and my whole life is a tangent. I can't keep a complete thought. It's kind of like, oh, we said this and I need to ask that question. So okay, so as far as the moon is concerned, this should be a good starter set for anybody that wants to get out and learn a little bit about the moon and photographing it. So that's awesome. So step away from the moon, because I know that the moon is interesting, but what really has me fascinated most recently is your work with like Saturn, all those rings. Are you doing that with, I guess, with the same equipment? Are you shooting Saturn and these other planets, Jupiter, differently than you are with the moon?
No, the only thing that's different is the settings.
Okay.
That's really the only thing that's different. You use the same equipment. You use this is a filter wheel because both of those cameras are mono. And so by shooting with a mono camera, you don't have a Bayer matrix to contend with. And so you get 100% red, 100% green, and 100% blue, rather as the Bayer matrix, you would get 25% of those on average. So you get a sharper picture. And with planets, not necessarily the moon, but with planets, the bigger the telescope, the better. That's period, case closed, end of story.
So yours is what? Tell me again. It's 2,800 millimeters.
Yeah, so it's a Celestron 11-inch XLT, and so that's 2,800 millimeters at f10. But when I shoot planets, I'll usually add a 2x Barlow, which just it's a magnifier 2x, but everything magnifies 2x. So now it's 5,600 millimeters at f20.
Okay.
Which means now that you have to shoot slower
Slow.
frames,
Okay.
slower frames, which then increases the atmospheric turbulence, and so there's a real fine line of how to adjust that stuff. But it's just a science experiment.
So 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 you're self-taught, right?
About 95%, yeah.
So who are your heroes that are doing this type of work? Who are you following that you go, wow?
Ironically, the ones that I look up to aren't really on Instagram. They're
Okay, well, no, that's okay. They don't have to be on Instagram.
uh,
But
Robert
I'm sorry, who?
Robert Reeves is one of the best lunar photographers in the world. He's actually from San Antonio.
Oh, well, let's go stalk him.
Hey, I know he has like 2 books published, I think, but he's been doing it for like 40 some odd years.
Well, let's knock on his door and go, hey, we're from Texas. Let us in.
Oh, I know him. I'm
Oh, you
friends with
do
him.
know him. Okay. Okay. Because I'm not scared. I'll do it.
We know where tacos are at. Um, and then obviously anybody who shoots planets knows Damian Peach and Christopher Go. Uh, they're the best of the best. So one of these days, maybe, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, at the rate you're going, well, okay. I'll just say it. In my little world of being brand new to like shooting the Milky Way, in fact, Milky Way's new. Moon, I still can't get real excited about it. But I did try. I did try recently and was not very successful. But some of the other stuff, I don't know. I call it deep space. I don't know what the real technical term is, but some of that stuff is fascinating. Absolutely, just well, it is otherworldly, but um, the images are beautiful. And what I'm going to ask you to do, Matt, is maybe send me a handful of them so I can attach it to this video so that people can kind of see other um, images that you've done. And I think that would be a nice way to kind of, you didn't show very many images through your presentation, but I'd like
They're all scattered on hard drives all across.
they're all over the place, to give people a sampling of the work you're doing. And it for you it's all fun and games, but it's not just that. I read your captions and you're doing research, um and really you're educating people whether you realize it or not. And you're right, if you could just get one person to get interested in, hey, mom, dad, I'd kind of like a telescope, just you've opened up the world to a lot of people. So for that, I think that's a really a special contribution that you've done. So pat yourself on the back for that. So, all right. Anything else you want to talk about before I let you go?
Uh, I don't know. I don't know what all I've covered.
Well, you know what? This is such a very uh, this is a very informal session. Usually, when people come on, they have um, you know a presentation and they have a spiel, and I really kind of am kind of glad that it was kind of a one-on-one conversation, that we could kind of talk about this. And it's not, every one of these doesn't have to be a serious how-to. It's more like it's connecting people that have the same interest, and then in your way, whether you realize or not, you're inspiring people. And if that person is just me, check it off your list because you did that. And for me, if somebody sees this and they decide, I want to just try it, they're going to create some work. They're going to create a
Yeah.
piece of art. And who knows who they show it to that gets their people excited, whether it's a kid or a cousin or somebody else is going to see that. And just getting, I guess for me, is get people off the couch and go and do something. And I'm hoping that that's something that, I can accomplish here. And
Like, especially with 2020, and if there's a selling point to any of this,
yeah,
if there's a selling point to this, you can do this from your house.
exactly.
Pajamas.
Yep. Yep.
You don't have to go
Because
anywhere.
yeah, because and that's exactly something that I was thinking of earlier today. I'm a traveler. I love to travel, and I can't go anywhere except to Cotulla, Texas. And you and I both know what's in Cotulla, Texas.
Yep.
So I've kind of supplemented my traveling to my backyard, and I'm practicing my wildlife photography. And granted, they're white-winged doves, and they're not anything special, but I've put some energy into trying to learn a little bit more about it. And for you, this has given you an opportunity to, be at home. I know that's, because of an injury, you're stuck at home for a little while, but
The best thing.
you've had time to pull out your toys, and you can play with them, not just, for a couple hours at a time. You can actually go out every night if you can stand the cold, or and you get your chores done. So I know that is something you've had to work through.
Yeah.
But it's I don't know. It's just one of these. If you get nothing from what I'm trying to say, is get off your couch. Sometimes you have to motivate yourself, but sometimes when you look at other people's work and you hear what they have to say, it's like, well, it's really not that hard. It's really not. Just get out and try. And if you don't know the answer or you get stuck, reach out to the people that are talking about these things. And, and people have had a taste of Matt Smith here. He's a friendly guy. He's going to answer your questions. He gets probably a bunch of direct messages all the time, but if he
Every
sees it,
single one of them.
I'm sorry.
I try to answer every single one of them too.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons that I was excited that you said you would do this, because the people that are willing to step up and say, yeah, I'll do this little presentation for Linda's little group, they're genuinely people that love to teach and love to share. And that's the best part of this type of creative art is, everybody has learned something and they're willing to share it. If you can help somebody just figure out a simple little thing that you figured out from the beginning, you're going to save them time and you're going to inspire them to get out more often. So if you're listening to this, reach out to Matt. He's, like you said, he does answer every message that he sees. And that means you better not ignore mine, Matt. So, all right, I'm going to wrap this up and say thank you, Matt, for doing this. I know that, you bet. And I'd love to have you come back and talk about more of the deep space stuff, but we'll have to figure that out. So I know that you were strapped on time, and that's one of the reasons we didn't do this session live. Matt's got a crazy work schedule, and it's unpredictable, and he's often in the middle of nowhere that doesn't have good Wi-Fi, and that this would not have worked if you were out on location. So, and just trying to find a good time to do this. So that's why we had to squish it through during the holiday break. So I'm very grateful to you for making the time to do this presentation. You guys, you can find Matt on Instagram at insert astro name here, and you'll want to find his YouTube channel under the same name and check out. He was referring to some of the tutorials that he's added to his channel, and they are one, they're easy to follow. Two, he's funny, and just ignore some of the little, the curse words he uses, but they're hilarious because if you were in his situation, you'd be saying them too. So if you want help to learn more about astrophotography and gain an appreciation for the work that goes into capturing these images of deep space, check out his YouTube channel. So I'm going to close by saying, please join me on Wednesday when my guest, Chris Zebo, is going to be here to present the art of travel and editorial landscape photography. And this month, I'll be doubling up on sessions. So on Thursday, Rob Hoovis will be here to present In a Flash, lightning photography, and dark sky time lapse. So until next time, go out and create something beautiful. And I hope that we see you next week.